All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call to order this work session of the Larimer County Board of Commissioners. Today is Monday, July 29th, 2019. I'm Tom Donnelly, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners this year, joined by John Cavallis, Commissioner from District 1. Steve Johnson, Commissioner from District 2, will be joining us in just a few moments. This is the Commissioners' weekly community development work session with Laurie Kadrich, our Interim Director of Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources, although she's sitting in the gallery rather than at the table. Our county manager, Linda Hoffman, is also here with us. Laurie, did you have any introductory remarks or anything you'd like to say?
No, sir.
Okay, so we have a couple items on the agenda. The first is the NOCO Places 2050. Is that your thing?
That is, yes.
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, Dalen?
Can we get the screen, Linda? Thank you. Well, I'm Dalen Figgs. I'm the Director for Natural Resources. And this afternoon, I really just wanted to bring this item to the attention of the Board of County Commissioners. You've heard it in the past. I just wanted to provide a little background and some additional information. So what I'm going to talk today about is a planning process called NOCO Places 2050. And NOCO stands for Northern Colorado People, Land, Access, Conservation, Ecosystem, and Sustainability. And 2050 is the time horizon for this particular plan. So it's a plan intended to look at recreation and conservation management on public lands through 2050.
We'll have 55% more people in Larimer County in 2050 than we have right now.
That's exactly right, and that's the driving force behind this need. So there's really four topics I'm going to touch on today, and one is just a brief overview of the planning process, the NOCO Places, a description of a memorandum of understanding that we've been asked to enter into, and I'll describe what that is, Larimer County's role in this process, and then last, some funding that we are looking at through a grant application to DOLA. And so first, the purpose and background, as Commissioner Johnson pointed out, we have a lot of folks headed our way in Colorado. And this really raises the question about how do we work with our neighboring jurisdictions to create a planning process that's uniform in its approach to both natural resource and recreation management on public lands. One of the things that we recognize, and this is patterned in many ways off the Recreation Shooting Sports Initiative that was recently completed, but we recognize that if decisions are made at the local level, there's a ripple effect. So decisions we would make may affect the other counties and the other management jurisdictions. So for example, if we choose to close recreation access on a piece of property in Larimer County, it doesn't mean people aren't going to stop to recreate on those public lands. It just means they go somewhere else. So we really don't want to address problems by forcing people to travel further or go to other lands. The approach here is really to work with the partners shown here on the slide to come up with this uniform approach. So we're all making decisions as much as we can in unison so we understand the impacts we may be having on each other and address recreation needs that way. So as been stated already, there's a lot of people moving to Colorado. We expect to see 150,000 people in Larimer County, and the Front Range of Colorado grow to over 4.5 million people by 2050. So this is a tremendous number of people coming this way. And they're coming here in many ways to enjoy the outdoor lifestyle. We enjoy it. People that currently live here enjoy it. And the folks who want to come to Colorado are going to continue to do that. So this is really the question of the day. We have all the people coming to Colorado, but we're not making any more mountains and we're not making any more public lands. How do we manage the recreation that's here? It's John.
Dalen, are you and your collaborators taking into consideration how the outdoor lifestyle might be affected in 2050 as far as hotter temperatures, water tables that are much lower, all those kinds of things?
That's a great question, and we'll definitely need to look at that as we get into the planning process. There'll be some public process and lots of questions around things like climate and what that does to our environment, how that affects recreation. So it's on the table to consider, but it's going to be a tough one to answer, quite frankly, to get solid answers on those trends in this time frame, but we're sure going to try. Yeah. So one of the concerns that we have as sort of this planning body is the initial reaction from many would be to just close these public lands to recreation in a way that protects the natural and cultural resources of the landscape. And this planning approach is really taking a different approach, and it really is, how do we maintain access to public land, support this outdoor lifestyle that's so important to Colorado and our quality of life, but do so in a manner that really makes smart choices around conservation practices that we can use to conserve these resources that are important to us. And this planning process is really the effort to do that. It really asks that question, how do we maintain this recreation access? So it is a collaborative process, and it really focused on building a common platform that all the planning partners can participate in. And then from that, there's really two levels of planning. One is a regional recreation and natural resource plan that includes the Arapahoe-Roosevelt National Forest, the Park Service, the county, the state, Parks and Wildlife, and others in the planning process. And then in addition to that, the partnerships will continue to work and build recreation and natural resource plans at the local level. So this gives Larimer County a chance to tailor fit these resource plans into existing planning documents like we already have. The comprehensive plan, the master plans that DNR works under, for example, will be included in this planning effort. And then last, to make sure all of this is tied together across this landscape, it also advocates for a forest plan update for the Arapahoe-Roosevelt National Forest. So they can bring this planning concept into the forest plan that eventually gets passed. So Larimer County's role to date has really just been to dedicate staff to the project. I've been attending as a member of the executive committee and of the planning committee. We've worked together so far to build the skeleton of this planning outcome and are working toward implementation phase, which we'll talk about in a second. We know the first thing we'll need to do is a community outreach communication plan, and we've already started laying the groundwork for that, getting the information out to the public so they can participate in this. And then eventually we'll be needing to work on the plan itself with some staff working on it, on the planning documents. So we'll be asked to lead the Larimer County plan. And again, this is a consistent planning approaches between the partners involved. We'll tailor it to fit Larimer County. And the one thing that's interesting about this is I wish I could describe what this plan will look like, but I can't because this is the first of its kind. We're the first group that's taken on this task at this scale. So we're going to need to develop this process and the planning documents that come from this through this effort. So we'll figure that out as we go. And then last is on the plan is an MOU. So as any group of public agencies get together, you tend to draft memorandums of understanding to really provide outlines for how the partners are going to commit to the project. And this one does provide a framework for collaboration for the development and implementation of this long-term plan. The good thing with the MOU, it's a non-binding agreement. We can opt out at any time. There's no financial commitment. And it really is just a plan to collaborate to achieve this outcome around recreation and conservation planning.
So, when you talk about the Larimer County plan, the parks folks a year or two ago did some pretty extensive public surveys of what kind of recreational opportunities people are using, and that would probably be a good thing to incorporate into the plan. I think that data is recent enough that it can help us figure out, what are people looking for? Hiking, mountain biking, boating, I think it was really a very well done survey.
I agree.
I'm sure you've looked at it. But,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the advantage of having the county level plans is we can incorporate the existing plans we work under into this. And so absolutely the 2017 Reservoir Parks Master Plan, Our Lands, Our Future, the 2015 Open Space Plan, the county's comprehensive plan, all will influence this plan that's created under the NOCO banner. So absolutely we'll use all of that. And then the last thing I want to touch on this afternoon is really just some funding around this. So to date, all the work has been done just sort of building the skeleton and identifying the needs and working to understand how we move forward in a planning process. But now is really the time to start the planning process. And as an executive committee, we've recognized the need to hire a project manager. This is just too much work for any one entity to take on. And so we've decided to hire a person to work on behalf of NOCO 2050 on this. Clear Creek has taken it upon themselves, one of the counties that's participating in this, to submit a DOLA grant on behalf of the partnership. And they can submit to the Energy and Mineral Impact Assistance Fund and have drafted a grant for submittal this week for $200,000. Larimer County, along with all the other partners, have identified that we can provide in-kind match through our salaries and travel and things of that nature toward use in matching the grant. And the other we've talked about and generally agreed to is to provide some seed money for 2019 to get this project moving forward, and hiring a project manager. So when the grant would start in 2020, in this way we can lay the groundwork for successful planning operations starting in 20 and ending hopefully in 2022. So
is this largely on federal lands?
this is a big chunk of this is the Arapahoe Roosevelt National Forest
So
is really one of the
What
drivers.
confidence do we have that our planning effort will affect their decisions?
Very much so.
Really?
Yes, they're in the room with us. The forest supervisor, Monty Williams, is dedicated to this. And he sees this as a way to influence the Arapahoe National Forest the plan itself, the forest plan. The Forest Service is looking at new ways to build relationships and partners with the surrounding communities in which the forest lies. And so this is really a pretty strong initiative on their part.
Because, I mean, if we're expending a significant amount of local money, I think we would want some assurance that it's going to make a difference to our federal partners, because
Yes.
I don't know how much authority they have versus sending something back to Washington to get a plan changed. But I would hate to see us spend local money and then hear, well, we went to the bosses back in DC and it's in the works somewhere and it never happens. You know what I mean?
I do.
You're confident that's not going to be the case?
I am as confident as I can
Glad to
be.
hear that.
Yeah. So to date, the Forest Service has been nothing but supportive of this concept. And in fact, because it's new and it's first of its kind, they've have shown a light on it a little bit as to what other forest units may want to consider
Good.
moving
That
forward.
would be good news, I
I
think.
agree.
I mean, don't you think that's a problem, an issue? Something to be concerned about?
Well, it's just that they have a lot of different stuff, and their process is so long, right? I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I think the forest plan would come at the heels of this planning effort. So because it is a lengthy process, and how much overlap there is, I don't know, but it definitely will be adopted post NOCO 2050.
I think it's important for us to try, because 50% of Larimer County is public lands, and most of that's the Forest Service. So our citizens use that resource extensively. I think it would be great to have, I'm not sure what the exact word, have additional opportunities to partner with them. Could really benefit our citizens.
I think it will be a fantastic outcome. I'm really optimistic this is going to work very well. Bless you. And one other item on the NOCO 2050 group is there is a seat available for Larimer County Commissioner if one of you would like to participate in this planning effort. And I'll just let you
One of
decide.
us has had extensive work on working with those other counties already on the shooting initiative.
They already just like me.
So there you go.
Maybe you want to have
There
somebody.
you go.
You're gonna have the white hat.
We'll think about it, but
Well,
I
we
think Tom
John
would be
might want to
perfect.
do it. I mean, we'll be gone.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a short termer.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. We can figure it out.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Think, that's a great opportunity, really.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
for John.
Are you in this cycle of the energy and mineral impact money?
Clear Creek plans to submit the grant. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So over time, we don't know how much money there will be in that. So I would just point out that in the future, Clear Creek may have a unique opportunity because there's some separate pot of money, the gambling money, that DOLA also controls. Larimer County doesn't have access to it, but I know that Gilpin County does.
Yes, and I know the commissioner from Clear Creek is working with DOLA to understand kind of which pot of money doesn't compete with their other funding sources they look at through DOLA, and this is the one they had settled on. And the backstory to that I don't fully know, but
There's no general fund. You're not asking for any general fund.
there's no general fund involved. So any match that we would provide would be from DNR existing funds.
Okay.
Yeah. And so tomorrow at Admin Matters, the MOU will come for your approval. And this, just if there's questions around that, I just wanted to get in front of it a little bit.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right.
All right? Thank you.
All right. Good
Okay,
afternoon.
let's go.
Leslie Ellis, Community Development Director. So I have 2 updates, including a question for you, and then we'll let you have the rest of your afternoon since you have no hearings today, no land use hearings anyway.
Down here. Point asked us.
So the first item, Commissioner Johnson, you asked for an update on Paddler's Pub and what
Yeah,
was
I haven't heard
happening.
anything about that for a while, and I know they were talking about doing some type of sewage improvements after a fundraiser they had Labor Day last year. So I think they're kind of in a special event approval process now where they can hold a few events. I've seen on their social media they are having events. So are they in compliance with our expectations and requirements at this point? That just kind of I
Yeah,
thought we'd
sure.
be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, they are, and Samantha Mott is the case manager, and she's not here today, so she gave me some notes. But basically, we met with them, the owners, back in March, and laid out some options for them to move forward to amend their special review or come in with a site plan. And to our understanding, they have not come in to resubmit. We did give them the option that if none of those things were feasible in this time frame, or they couldn't do anything right away, that they could apply for special event permits. And as long as they're compliant with our rules, such that they can have up to 30 days worth of events, no more than 1 per month, no more than 3 per year, that they could move forward and apply for special events. And that's what they've done. They've held 2 now, one in May, one in June, one in late May over Memorial Day, one in July, and they have another one coming up in the middle of August. And they got approvals for the first 2. They held them. We heard no complaints or any sort of pushback on those events. And then one that's coming up has been approved to move forward in August.
Okay.
So they're in compliance.
Good.
That's where they stand.
All right, good, thank
They
you.
are in compliance?
They're in compliance with our special events permitting process. Yes, they haven't opted to come in and
They can't
submit.
use special events permits
They
because they have a special
can.
review approval.
It's a little bit different in this case. I asked
told
that
Randy
same
the same
question.
thing.
Well, they don't have an approval as part of their special review that identifies events or that puts a cap on the events. So it's a little bit different in nature in what it allows for. So as we read our regulations, they actually are eligible to apply for special events. So it's a little bit different where
So what's their special review?
the
approval?
Arise is a good example where they have a limit in how they can use that property for certain events, and it's capped at a certain number of people and so on. So they had to appeal that process, and they need to amend the special review process in order to continue to operate that or to continue to have an event at the property. So, and I don't know if Matt.
So what's the
did you-
approval for Paddler's Pub? It absolutely was for events. It was absolutely for events. Remember they were
We
going to
can
have people living
follow
in the
up.
storage
I
units?
thought it was a
Yeah.
concert venue.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
concert venue.
We can follow up on that, but that was a question I asked Samantha too, and she,
The Paddler's Pub special review has never been acted upon. So the special review
They just have to
was
vacate it.
approved and they've never acted upon it. It's
3 years
because they're trying to work out all the details. In the interim, because they've never implemented their approval, they're allowed to apply under the special
And we discussed that.
event
and
process.
We blessed that or whatever the
That
word
was
is.
what we
approved that.
discussed last year.
Yeah,
You're
we
correct,
discussed
Commissioner
that would be
For
the
how
route they
long?
go.
We brought him in and we told
Until
him.
they have
said
to make a
1 year.
decision.
The guy
on where-
promised us that he would do whatever. I don't even remember what he promised.
It
So
was
he'd
some
go
type
pave
of
the
a
parking lot.
It was some type of a forced line, a
He was
pump
supposed
line.
to submit a site plan and give us information to do that, and we're waiting on that again.
He has never done it.
We'll probably end up doing this again next year, trying to figure it out.
I told you he would never do it. Badmouth me, won't do anything except post negative stuff about me on Facebook.
That makes me feel good.
If that would get him approved, then great. I could care less. I can just tell you what's going to happen.
But because he's never acted upon the special event, it's not.
Special
Well,
review.
let's not have any
Okay.
rules then.
Special
Let's not
review.
have any rules. Let's let anybody have any number of events, as many people as they want. Let's not make anybody put in any kind of bathrooms. Let's just let them use porta potties. Why do we make everybody else do this
You
stuff?
can do that for a special event.
Why do we make other people put? We made a dude ranch up in the mountains. Put a recycled asphalt parking lot in for how many people can go there a year? 20? Nobody. This guy's parking them on grass. Man, when I was a kid and went to the Littlest Dances in Littlest, Kansas, a guy's car set the parking lot on. There was no, it was grass parking lot. It set the parking lot on fire. Burned everybody's car up. I remember it. But why do we have rules? Let's not even have any rules. If we're going to let one person violate every rule, why have rules? And the Board of Commissioners is going to uphold that and say they can. That we don't care if they don't follow any rules.
He
Shit.
doesn't have a special review that's he's operating under.
The next time they build a Safeway store in Fort Collins, they shouldn't make them pave a parking lot either. I mean, this guy has 1,000 people out there on Saturday night. He's got 500 cars or something. 400 cars?
Well, thank you for the update.
Okay.
It's crazy. I don't think you're right on that. I think you need to look at that again. I don't think that's true.
That's what we talked about. We
No,
talked about
that's
this
not what
last
we
year.
talked about. Bring the minutes. Bring the minutes.
Okay.
Bring us the minutes.
I remember that's why I
Bring us
asked.
the minutes. He's not right. He doesn't remember anything else, but he remembers this. I don't believe it.
Selective memory.
Yeah,
All right.
I
exactly.
can't remember what I had for lunch, but I remember.
So, do you have anything
So
else?
we'll go on to the next item. So
Okay,
you've
because I have
had-
one thing. I have one thing I want to mention
Yeah,
to these
go
guys.
ahead. Oh,
ahead.
do you want to go? Okay.
No, you can go first.
Okay. So we've had several requests to bring in some experts in addition to our consultant Ken Fellman on the wireless
Oh, yeah.
facilities work session. Really, it comes back to county commissioners directing staff how you'd like to set up that session, what resources you'd like to have available. If you'd like to have additional resources, if you feel like Ken Fellman as a resource is an adequate resource, or if there's something else you'd
When
like
is
to
that?
do. So it's August 21st.
And is that our work session, BCC
it's a
and
joint
Planning Commission?
Session with Planning Commission,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And we were tasked with preparing land use regulations for wireless facilities, and in so doing, looking at the legal constraints and abilities and local authority around land use regulations related to wireless facilities and small cell facilities and so on. I think we've had a lot of requests to delve into other areas that might be worthy of some discussion, but from our standpoint in community development are probably beyond our scope related to land use regulations.
This was a
but-
task force of commissioners and Planning Commission, right? I'm getting them mixed up whether this is
Yeah.
a task force like the oil and gas. We didn't appoint people. This is our regular.
Nope, this,
So
so
are
this
the-
is your regular process. So Planning Commission reviews a proposed regulation and makes a recommendation, and then the county commissioners review it and make a decision.
So are these requests from Planning Commissioners?
So Planning Commission at their meeting, their hearing back in June, they opted to defer and basically table that hearing and asked staff if we could come back with more information and bring our consultant to a work session and invite you all to participate in that work session also, so that you could have some joint conversation around the input and the ideas that come up in that work session. So that's when we scheduled the session on August 21st, so that we could hear from Mr. Fellman and understand some of those parameters for this discussion. And since that time, we've had these requests to bring in other panelists.
Have we heard from him before? There was a gentleman that came and talked to us about small cell towers, remember, at
No,
one of
that
these meetings? Was
was-
this somebody different?
That was directed from the industry.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
an industry representative. Mr. Fellman, we contacted him through our membership in CCUA, the Colorado Utilities Association. It's a nonprofit association. He works with Municipal League and that association, and
Was CML Colorado
advises,
Municipal? Okay.
yeah, advises local governments. He doesn't have any industry clients. He just advises local governments and works through those associations. I think some of the allegations that he has a conflict of interest because of his relationship to the House bill in 2017, House Bill 1193, were that he didn't advocate against the bill, or he didn't advise accurately about the potential negative impacts of the bill on local governments. I think he himself, I did watch the panel discussion that happened last week at the Boulder City Council that included a lot of those folks, and he explained pretty well in that session what happened and kind of what the different issues were around that bill. I'm very confident that he does not have a conflict of interest, and I think that he'll provide sound legal advice. And we're, of course, working with Frank and our own attorney's office to make sure that they feel comfortable and that they understand the legislation and our local authority and what we can do.
So my understanding of the whole tower thing was we had an experience with a sighting near a residential neighborhood that brought up concerns about our notification, maybe our setback requirements. Right. And I thought that it was more limited to address those kinds of issues as opposed to the oil and gas regulations, which are pretty open-ended. We don't have any, so we're going to develop new regulations. So I viewed this as much more limited. Mm-hmm. I mean, my suggestion would be that we proceed with what you have scheduled. We hear from this gentleman. If we believe that he doesn't give us information that we need or that we need additional information, we want to do more things after that hearing, we certainly could schedule additional sessions with additional folks, but my advice would be, rather than prejudge what he's going to say, that we listen to what you have prepared and see if that meets our needs. That'd be my suggestion. And then I'll shut up.
I have a few questions. So with regard to Mr. Fellman, I believe he is the consultant that you all tasked with analyzing, reviewing the document that the advocates provided us with maybe 2 months ago now. Mm-hmm. And so is it correct that one of his primary charges is to provide us with an analysis of that report or that document?
He is looking at the public feedback that we got and the comments that we received and giving us advice on how we can address if there's some room to maneuver within the proposal that we have now from a land use standpoint. Again, I mean, a lot of the comments have to do with cybersecurity and personal use of cell phones and health effects and that kind of thing that we can address, but probably from the standpoint of that those are out of scope for this particular project. But he will give us feedback and advice on what we can do to address things like setbacks or aesthetic issues or spacing of facilities or those types of issues primarily. And then he'll address the other issues, and if we feel like we need additional resources to address some of those things. I think as you all have heard, we do have limited ability within the parameters of what the federal FCC gives us as local authority to address the environmental effects or the health impacts of the facilities. And so we can only do so much within our regulations related to that. And then the most recent state legislation gives us authority and some constraints in terms of what we can do in terms of regulating small cell facilities within the right of way. So that's what it addresses primarily. So he is looking at all of those, and he's also going to come in with some advice and information about what our local authority is and what we can do to maneuver within what I would call kind of safe territory of what local jurisdictions can do without pushing the edge to where we might be legally liable. And of course, some jurisdictions choose to go there, and that's your prerogative, but he'll at least let you know what our safe zone is in terms of maneuvering within legal parameters.
So the Boulder City Council meeting, which you watched, mm-hmm. Leslie and others, and the extended panel, which included a lot of the folks that Cindy Peck or the mm-hmm. advocates have asked for, mm-hmm. in addition to Kenneth Fellman, were they mostly focused on the potential health risks, or were they bringing up other, maybe different points of view about the regulatory authority, land use authority mm-hmm. of the county? Could you speak to that, please?
Sure. A little bit of both. So the panel included some technical experts and folks who are just following the technology and what's happening with 5G and how it's getting rolled out into communities and what it might mean from a timing standpoint and that sort of thing. So there were two people on the panel that really addressed the technology. There were two people who were both epidemiologists and toxicologists who talked about what's being studied out there, and they both presented some different information. They didn't fully agree on what the science is telling us. I think they both agreed that probably more research is needed. There is some evidence that there may be some health effects, but it's just not known right now. And so, and a lot of them recognize the fact that probably the cell phones that we carry themselves have bigger health effects than the towers that emit signals to the cell phones. And that was something, so there was a lot of discussion about how, how it affects children and that kind of thing, using cell phones. So that was, from a land use standpoint, not something we regulate, obviously, where somebody carries a cell phone on their body or how they use it. There was another person who was another attorney who issued a policy report who looked at what's happening in terms of some of the lawsuits that are playing out there. And I think both attorneys, including Ken Fellman and Mr. Wilson, both recognize that if litigation changes the landscape, or if the federal rules change, there's a lot of litigation happening in that front, that might give local governments more authority to do more things with their regulations. But right now, we have certain parameters and constrictions on what we can do. So those were the panelists, in essence, who spoke, and some of them were the ones that Ms. Peck asked us to bring on, and there were some others on her list who weren't part of that discussion.
So there were others, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want us to do? What are you asking us?
I'm just asking you if you want us to bring more people or not, because it's really your call, and we're just, we'll do what you want to do. We're flexible, but I think from our standpoint, we feel very comfortable with the advice that Mr. Fellman's giving us.
I don't need any more consultants.
I'd like to hear the panel that they put together, and then after that, decide whether or not we want to have any more.
Well, it's already,
That'd be my advice.
the panel's already spoken, though, haven't they?
No,
So
it's
there's no,
August.
let me be clear, there's no panel right
I mean,
now. We have a
program that
consultant,
you have.
right?
Whatever's
Right.
happening on August 21st, I want to hear
Right.
that
August
first.
21st
Okay.
is what? Presentation
August
to the board?
21st is staff and Mr. Fellman.
And this fellow
presenting.
will be presenting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And why are we having the joint meeting?
Because I think that came up.
Is it our work session or is it an
It's a-
adoption meeting?
It's a work session.
Oh, just
so,
a work session. Oh,
So
okay.
we are doing another draft of the draft regulations that we'd put together, working within our staff team and with Mr. Fellman to help advise us in terms of some things that we could adjust. And then basically it's really to hear from him and ask questions, or to ask questions and have some discussion with staff, just so that really you all feel comfortable when we come back in September and October and with adoption drafts. And if there are things that aren't in the draft at that point that you would like in the draft, you can give us direction to do that.
So Leslie, I just wanted to clarify a question that Commissioner Johnson asked earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he asked, was it Planning Commission members that were asking for additional consultants? And at least it's my understanding that it's not the Planning Commission requesting
Okay.
additional consultants, it's folks that have come to the hearing.
Correct. It's been members of the public, although one planning commission member did chime in, and then several others chime in with different perspectives.
Wendy
But really,
Tripp
it's your county commissioner's direction as to how staff should bring in resources around
If
this.
I
So
may
that's why
ask
we're asking you.
Another question. So part of our proposed changes to Section 16 of the Land Use Code regarding the different levels of review includes micro cell towers. And if I'm not mistaken, micro cell towers are associated with 5G deployment. And so my question is, would any of these other panelists be helpful in providing information that would help us navigate that part of what we're thinking of changing? Going back to what Commissioner Johnson said was that this all started back when we approved through the administrative review process, the really attractive 100-foot stealth monopine tower, and
Well,
his point is
guess
well taken.
Two things based on what I heard discussion of last week. One is that the small cell regulations in the right-of-way tend to be put forward in a way that's agnostic as to whether we're talking about 4G or 5G or what have you that's out there, because the 5G technology is going to use the same types of physical facilities to transmit their signals as like a 4G would need. The other thing is that it was pretty clear from the technology folks who were there that 5G is going to be deployed initially in big cities, New York City, downtown Denver, places that are very dense, very tightly packed, because they have to be located very close together, and it's only cost effective if they're in close places. They'll use them in stadiums, for instance, when the Broncos game is going on and everybody's trying to text photos to each other. That's when you need that type of technology to move the signals faster. So I think our small cell regulations that we're starting to put forward will address that probably adequately, but that would be a good question that we could look into a little bit more, or ask our consultant to look into a little bit more as well.
So what did the Planning Commission table?
They tabled adopting draft regulations at that point so that we could do a little bit more investigation of these questions.
It was on their agenda.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So they asked us to basically go and look into some of the questions that came up through the public about kind of legal parameters and a number of other topics.
So were
as
these
well.
draft regulations for the large cell phone towers, or were these draft regulations for the small?
It's both.
Yeah, they're
because
both.
we're
Okay.
replacing and repealing our current regulations in Chapter 16 that deal with big towers, because those regulations are about 12 years old now. So they didn't, they were done well in advance of the small cell technology.
I've seen some pictures of the small cell facilities that folks have shown me that have large power boxes or ancillary control boxes that seem very intrusive and would be something that a traditional land use concern outside of health, just the visibility and, of all of those things. Do our regulations address those pertinent facilities? Do we have the ability to address them?
We do have the
Okay.
ability. Our initial draft talked about undergrounding those types of facilities, co-locating those types of facilities. You can ask the telecom companies to paint them a color to match.
I think they produce a noise too in some
Yep.
cases. I'm not sure why or what the noise is,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
some of the folks that come to my meeting have talked about the noise those facilities produce, and I think that's a traditional land use
Yep.
conflict or concern that we should be addressing.
Right. So those are the kinds of things that are addressed in the draft, for instance. And if you don't feel like they're addressed adequately, we can take a fresh look.
Just like everything else.
Just to follow up on that, Leslie's right. There's two sort of things. One is the big towers. That's one regulation, but then the small ones, the House bill at the state level and also the FCC regulations, there's separate rules to encourage the development of 5G. So both the federal and state government pass laws saying we want to do this faster, and that's what's restricting the local jurisdiction's power, is because both the feds and the state want to speed it up. For what that's worth. But that's just to the small cell towers.
All right. So I think what I'm hearing is carry on with August 21st with Mr. Fellman as our person to be there. If at that point you don't feel like you've had all your questions answered and you as a board would like to direct us staff to go and do some more research or ask some more questions or bring somebody on, we'll do that.
Okay.
But hopefully that will cover what you need at that session.
You have done, you've rewritten the section about the camouflage and all the stuff about the towers.
We
Which
have.
was really the big problem we were trying to deal
Yep,
with. Okay.
setback, zoning districts, all
right,
the things that I think, public notification, there were
Okay.
a number of issues I think that came up as a result of that.
Great.
So you'll have a chance to weigh in and tell us if you think we got it right or if we need to do something different.
Will a decision be made at the August 21st
No,
joint work session?
no decision,
session.
just a work session. So the schedule after that proposed is September 11th with Planning Commission. So they'll review and make a recommendation at that session.
What if they won't recommend?
What if they don't recommend?
What if they won't make a recommendation?
That
We just
happens sometimes.
we just vote. Well, sometimes they vote. They
Yeah.
recommend against things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what if they're just too afraid to make a
I
recommendation
think
at
the
all?
statute says we should refer it to the planning commission, whether they
Yeah.
come up with an affirmative or.
So maybe we've already met that obligation.
think
Maybe we've already met that standard.
Well, they tabled it. So.
Yeah.
If they don't make a decision, it would go on to you either way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not making a recommendation is in its own way a recommendation.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
then it comes to you in October. So
Okay.
that's the schedule at this point for adoption. So that's where we are.
Anything else?
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
I got a call this morning from a guy, and I don't know anything about this. He claims that it's House Bill 1234,
I got the same call.
and he says it allows delivery of starting in 2020 medical marijuana, and or maybe 20 in 2020 medical marijuana, and 2021 regular marijuana as a delivery service. And whether and also apparently the counties have the ability to opt out. And so
The cities have that same.
Is it
I don't know
opt-out-
if it's city.
Opt out or opt in?
Well, that's what he told me, or opt in or opt out.
So you talked to the fellow?
No, I haven't talked to him. I was going to ask these guys if they knew anything about it. I'll have Michael. Maybe we have Michael call him. If I give you his phone number, can you just have Michael call him?
Yep.
So anyway, I guess I wasn't clear if it's only the dispensaries that we've permitted 2 dispensaries in Larimer County, and if we would only be deciding whether they could deliver. I don't know how would we even know if a dispensary in Fort Collins delivered.
I'll
How
check
would
with
we-
Michael. He's our resident expert,
Yeah, so
and he would.
It did
Hot
seem
expert.
like
Yep.
I had no idea they weren't already delivering. How
They
the
weren't. I don't
well,
know.
hell yes, they're delivering.
they're not
it may
supposed
not
to.
officially be delivering, but every 21-year-old guy is buying it, bringing it to every 16-year-old kid in Loveland at the skate park is sure as hell delivering it. I can guarantee you.
Which skate park?
And one by my
Okay,
house.
good.
I walk my
I
dog
just
by
wanna
there every
know.
night almost.
Asking for a friend. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so maybe on next week, can you see if we can get an
Sure.
update on that?
Yep.
You guys, he probably called all of us, I guess. And maybe I'd just give you his phone number and stuff, and maybe
Okay.
Michael could check in with him and see what his questions are.
And I had a related email from somebody or a phone call asking if we were going to approve recreational facilities. I think Denver has approved. Denver has approved the places where you go to use the recreational facilities, a
Oh.
club or something.
Oh.
I don't even know what our authority or whether that question is. You might ask Michael that too.
What do we have?
Know the authority?
The drinking dog or whatever. What is it called? What's the one in Wellington? Or not Wellington, LaPorte. What's the bar there?
Oh,
The Long Branch?
Laughing Dog?
No,
that one of them's gone. I don't know.
that'd be a good place for it.
I don't drive that far.
Why don't we look into that also, and
Yeah.
then we can come back.
Yeah, those.
I think it's you have to, so much percentage of your business has to be the sale of it, and so much has to be the consumption.
Have a tasting
I
room or
think
something.
Denver did theirs by local ordinance.
I think they did.
Maybe
I think Denver did.
Can just open
Yeah.
a little sampling
Tasting
room there.
room.
Yeah.
You're talking about the like cafes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have for you.
Yeah, I just tell you, I
Oh,
was in
let's-
Denver. I was in downtown Denver last weekend. You don't have to go to a cafe. You're smoking it on the street.
Secondhand.
I can tell you firsthand that I saw people smoking it firsthand.
Can you tell us the agenda for tonight? Do you know what's planned for tonight's meeting with us?
Yes.
That
Yep.
was my,
Sure,
I
yes.
went to the website and I see the agenda.
Okay.
I also see the PowerPoint that you folks put together.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'd be good if you could speak to that. And
Okay.
also, are we coordinating anything about how do we get
Right.
up there?
So,
Obviously not.
You're driving the van? Wow. Van
yeah, there's several different carpool options. So,
I'm heading west to Masonville.
So wait a minute, but let's talk
okay.
about the.
So the agenda. So
yeah.
5:30 starts.
Why so early?
I think just because we have a van full of
Senior citizens?
facilitators going up for one thing, and we'd like to get folks back down at a reasonable hour,
okay.
Before too late. So,
You have to be at 5 for dinner.
yeah.
You're not gonna be able to eat dinner in half an hour.
They have it up at the sandwiches upstairs.
Oh, they're
think-
serving us dinner.
I think so.
They're serving staff dinner. I don't know for sure about you, but we can look into that.
My
I
calendar
know.
says dinner.
I know staff.
Our calendar
But-
said dinner too.
Why don't you come
Yeah.
on? Why don't you come on over and have dinner? So, So 5:30 start. You're kicking off with a few remarks along with the mayor, as far
Yes.
as I know. We have a brief presentation that just basically conveys what's in the current agreement, what are some alternative options, and then the bulk of the meeting is really for some facilitated discussion. So we've got so far about 30 people who RSVP'd that they'll be there. We expect maybe somewhere around that number, give or take, people who didn't sign up, didn't RSVP. So we'll probably have 4 or 5 tables of folks with facilitators.
Small groups.
Small
It won't be to
groups.
the whole group.
Yep.
Okay.
Facilitators will.
The facilitators will
them
walk
through-
around.
No,
They'll be sitting at a table.
the-
Oh, and the
They'll stay
citizens
put.
will walk around.
correct.
We walk
No one walks around?
You can
We
walk around.
You walk around.
Why do I want to
The-
walk around?
The participants, the community members, will
at a
stay
table.
put at a table for 45 minutes with a facilitator.
Oh, I
and
see.
go through 4 questions, and we'll take notes, and then the facilitator will report out at
I
the
think
end.
that's good. I think that's
Yeah.
good. That way everybody can participate.
Want to walk
Yeah.
around, then you can hear
Yep.
what the various.
I don't want to hear.
But we
They
don't
don't talk
want
about
to
bad about me.
influence or steer those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
better
if
if we
you-
don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so if
exactly.
you'd rather sit at a table, in the back and have conversations of your own and wait for the report out, that's a
Casa,
possibility
whatever it is
too.
across the street.
Yeah, we could go eat during that part. How long is that going to be?
45 minutes.
That's 45 minutes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that might be a possibility if you
Yeah,
want
I
to go
could
eat.
probably get in and out there in
What
45
time
minutes.
is the van leaving?
So what time are you leaving, Matt? 4, 3:30?
Here at the front door at 3:30.
Van with no windows.
3:30, damn.
3:30.
Yeah, that's
like
the
Are you going
van
out?
There in
with.
time for
Are you
I'm
going
not
up at
leaving
night?
3:30.
You don't like to drive at night.
Well, you'll be up there
I can
4:30.
drive at night. I have my little glasses.
So that's the van with all the
Night vision
facilitators. So
goggles or what?
Leslie,
Superman.
at one time there was confusion about where this meeting is.
Yes.
Is it at Town
question.
Hall?
So it is at Town Hall.
Got
There was
changed.
some discussion at one point in the early planning stages of it being somewhere else, and then the town switched it back to Town Hall. So it is at Town Hall. We'll convene in the main town
The boardroom.
chambers
Yeah.
room, and then the small tables will be upstairs. So actually is an opportune moment if you wanted to go get a bite to eat or something, you could, and then rejoin the group after.
Okay.
So that's what's planned.
Great.
So the board chambers, 5:30.
Right.
So the first carpooling opportunity is at 3:30,
Pardon?
and if one doesn't make that, what are one's options?
You are not?
I think it sounds like maybe there's some
Linda.
later
You can rub
cars
Linda, and you
going
can probably
up.
rub Steve.
Right.
Steve said he's going through Masonville.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, but oh yeah.
So he'll probably come out of his little street and turn left.
Yeah.
What's
Oh,
that?
there you go. You can rub it, John.
Well, because somehow they scheduled a meeting with Mark Peterson, and he and I are meeting, and a few other folks at 3 o'clock.
Just tell Brenda you can't do it.
Be done by 3:30.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll figure it out.
Or tell her.
Does that work for you
Tell
to
her to
coordinate
schedule.
I can drive, John. I just have to get gasoline.
Linda can drive you.
Or I can drive, I guess.
You could drive Linda.
I did bring my car back.
Did you have any other questions about that? Otherwise, we'll see you up there.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Sounds fun. Oh yeah, let me give you this guy's number. Then Michael can call him instead of John and I have to call him.
That wasn't a good argument. That wasn't a good argument.
310-6122. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.